All right, folks, we're going to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the June 10th, 2026 Bar Large meeting in the public meeting room at 2 George Street. My name is Trey Watkins. I'll be serving as the chairman this afternoon. The other board members present are Mr. Metters, James Metters, Joel Trantham, and Mr. Jay White. City staff present are Lawrence Courtney, who's our staff architect, and Brad Thomas, staff architectural planner. Applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff will control the slide presentation. That includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Many of y'all are familiar with it. If you do want to control it yourself, just make sure you point at this computer with the clicker rather than at the screen. Applicants, if you want them to help you, just simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during the presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name when speaking. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the City of Charleston public meeting channel on YouTube. Your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. The order of the meeting is as follows. First, there'll be an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and to the public. The next section is applicant presentation. This is a 10-minute time limit or is determined by the chair, and with any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state their name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, whether that be owners, developers, designers, consultants, etc., should speak during this portion rather than the public comment. Our next section is public comment. All applications are part of a public meeting. Written public comments were due by noon the day prior to the meeting, and any received comments have been transmitted to and considered by the board. Written comments will not be read aloud during the meeting unless requested by a member of the board and with permission of the chair. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard in person on an agenda item at this time is requested to state their name and address for the record, and be reminded there is a 2-minute time limit for these remarks unless extended by the chair. Applicant does not respond to comments made during the public portion. Following that section, we will have the city staff comments and recommendation. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to respond or clarify to any of the public comments and the city staff comments and recommendations. The response time has a 5-minute time limit, and the applicant does not have to use the applicant response period if they don't feel it's necessary. Then we'll move into our board discussion and vote. The applicant presentation is now over and the public comment is closed. The applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand and waiting to be called upon. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on a motion. The chair shall reread a motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair. He has not reread the motion accurately. Once the motion is in proper order and seconded, each member when voting should respond yea in favor or nay, not in favor. The results will then be posted to the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. We had one item withdrawn and deferred. That's item B3, 261 Calhoun Street. That was withdrawn by the applicant. We have received no written public comments. And then finally, as a reminder, please turn off all cell phones and other potentially disruptive devices. Please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, and lot coverage, as well as livability department concerns, are not under the purview of this board and should and cannot be voiced here. Taking my own advice here, making sure my phone's off. All right.
Mr. Chairman, a brief interruption, if I may. I'd like to recognize for the record that this is your last meeting with us here tonight, and you've led the board as chair with grace and wisdom. Job well done, sir.
Thank you, Mr. White. I appreciate that. All right. The minutes from the last meeting were circulated. Is there a motion? All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. White, how do you vote?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Mr. Trantham?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters? I'm also yay in favor. Minutes are approved. All right, that moves us into our first agenda item.
The first
Item is 174 King Street, which is in the old and historic district. It is a circa 1876 Category 3 building. The applicant is requesting a revision to conceptual approval for alterations of an existing building. So with that, there's the project context, and it's now time for the applicant's presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm Tori Joseph with BMAC Hospitality. This project is the cafe building at the American Gardens Park that recently opened. We're revisiting this design because now that the park is open, we're rethinking a little bit how this building sits within the overall park and how it is activated. The concern with the building right now is that the opening on King Street, or sorry, the facade on King Street doesn't have a door. And so we've been working with the preservation groups and the city architect to make sure that we preserve that history while still creating an entry and a way to enhance guests to come off of King Street to the back side of the building, which is where our entry will be. So we worked with the groups. We had a proposal after meeting with them and going through a couple iterations, we've scaled it back a little bit more and how we applied the millwork to that facade. So we'll take you guys through where we landed, but hopefully that'll work.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Keith Simmel, and I am with Cooper Carey Architects. Second. And right there.
There's a little bit of a delay.
Okay. So I will move through this relatively quickly. I know you're familiar with this building, having gone through the conceptual design previously. I'll jump through a couple of these intro slides. The building sits at 174 King. And as Tori said, it's one of the few, if not the only building on King Street that does not have a door on King Street. And so that is one of the challenges to activate this as a commercially used building. The previously approved design acknowledged that there was no door and moved the access around to the south side. So in studying the plan and the further activation, now that it sits within the fully realized American Gardens, we are looking to activate essentially the southeast corner, the east facade, and a slight portion of the north corner to wrap the proposed storefront structure around that facade. So here are some precedent examples of some of the storefronts that we studied up and down King Street. There are also components that wrap corners at street intersections, which we did use as a precedent, as you'll see on some of our elevations and renderings. Here is the facade on King Street. And we are proposing no change to that facade. It will stay as is and as was previously approved. Here is the south facade. And this is the where we are showing the previously approved demo and a pass-through window in the rectangle you see sort of centered between the crepe myrtles. This was the previously approved facade alteration that shows that pass-through window and a single door on the southeast corner, which is the right-hand door. We are proposing creating a what we believe is a more refined pass-through window centered on the facade and installing a storefront wrap around the building that comes from the east facade that you'll see in a moment around the southeast corner and creates that as the primary entry for the cafe, which activates that entire ground floor plan. And that southeast corner and the east side of the building is where the public accesses the building. And because there's no door on King Street, it's actually sort of counterintuitively the back of house of the building where the support and the kitchen exists. You'll see that in plan in just a moment. The coloration, here the view of the facade with the trees removed so you can see the full elevation a little clearly. The coloration is intended to be sort of a subtle change in color between the existing brick and the storefront. Not terribly contrasting, but just enough so that you notice the storefront structure. So here is the existing, previously approved, proposed. East facade, same thing, that becomes the primary storefront. This is the existing facade. This was the previously approved facade. And here you see the storefront wrapping around that and really engaging what is now, for all intents and purposes, the front of the building because of the way that it engages the American Gardens, the fountain, the landscaping, and the way people move through the American Gardens. This facade is really seen from, in terms of access of how you would see it from a public right of way. It's seen from Meeting Street, which is several hundred yards away, and then from this park. We ended up vegetation. We have existing, previously approved, and proposed. From the opposite corner, really the only primary change that you'll notice is that we're wrapping that storefront around to sort of engage and give thickness and presence to the storefront on the northeast corner. And I'll do the view. Here's the view right here. You can see there's sort of a engagement right there on the northeast corner. Again, to give presence, and so it sort of gives a little hint of the storefront being there when you're walking from King Street and look down the alley. And here is the existing, previously approved, proposed. This is the coloration. Again, we're trying to make a subtle coloration differentiation between the brick and the proposed wood facade storefront. And the rest of the materials are in keeping with the vernacular of architecture along King Street. In terms of the plan, this is the previously approved floor plan. Skip the demo, and this is the proposed plan. You can see on the right-hand side, that's the front of the building. There's kind of a counter, transaction counter, a sales table. And then you can see right in the middle of the south facade is where the pass-through window would be from the sort of quasi back of house, front of house area where people can order from standing outside. There's a stair that goes upstairs within the facade, within the building, excuse me. Might be frozen. So upstairs, we're really not proposing much of a change of anything. It's just windows and the balcony that's on the east facade and some activities that are essentially sort of a private dining room, multi-purpose room, and a few back of house spaces. So I'm not sure if it's grabbing the slides here. The rest of the presentation really shows the demo and the before and after. So I can stop there or keep going. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah, you got about another minute or so if you want.
Okay.
And I'm happy to extend it a little further if you feel like you do that.
Okay. Let's see if we got. So there's the ground floor plan and the demo and proposed. All right, keeps doing this sort of ghosted slideshow.
Yeah.
It's Adobe. That's why it's taking us in.
I think while we're doing that, the frontal elevations that show the demo, what we're proposing is that the demolition of the existing brick facade, which is a triple width of bricks, is limited to where the openings are occurring. We're not removing any more, or proposing, excuse me, to remove any more brick that is necessary to create the openings, which is consistent with what the previously approved concept and what was executed was.
Gonna restart the presentation real quick.
While we're waiting on that, maybe if we can move into, if there's any questions from the board, maybe we'll have that discussion. If there's anything further you want to provide, we can always come back to it.
I don't have any questions.
For the storefront elevations, they call out new painted wood millwork storefront. Are there any joints or seams that we're not seeing in the elevation, or are they expected to be full panels within those elements that are there?
So we're gonna conceal the seams between the change in plane. So any seam that happens will be where there's a pilaster that's applied to the panel behind that, but it will be full panels without seams that will be obvious.
My only question.
Okay. Anything from you, Mr. Recreation? All right, great. Unless you have anything else to present to us.
Answer any other questions as they come up.
Great, thank you so much. Right, that'll take us into public comment now.
Anna Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. As the applicant mentioned, we had the chance to meet with the owner team and applicant on this request. And as King Street neighbors, it has been exciting to see this building revitalized and reactivated as part of American Gardens. Through our conversations with the design team, Preservation Society emphasized the importance of maintaining a visual hierarchy between the primary King Street facade and the park facing elevations, and prioritizing reversibility of alterations, especially with respect to the proposed storefront system at the rear. So we thank the applicant for taking that feedback into consideration, and we appreciate the board's evaluation of how these principles are carried forward in the final design. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lisa with Historic Charleston Foundation, Lisa Jones. HCF supports the revisions for conceptual approval for this Category 3 building at 174 King in the American Gardens Park. We recognize that this is a unique site and that the project has made a significant contribution to the public realm. Consistent with the BAR principle that states that buildings should not pretend to be isolated objects, but rather work together with their surroundings to define and enhance the public realm. And that's a direct quote. HCF finds that these alterations contribute to the pedestrian experience of the entire site while preserving the architectural history of the building. We also appreciate the applicant reaching out to HCF and the decision to preserve the historic stepped roof profile as a result of those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Take us into city staff comments and recommendations. Is there any other public comment?
Okay. Comments include that this project previously received conceptual approval in August of 2024, the final details to staff. The final review by staff was approved in January of 25, and the certificate of construction completion was issued in November of 2025. The applicant is requesting a revision to conceptual approval to make alterations to the existing building to include, but not limited to, new windows and doors, a painted wood storefront, exterior lighting, awnings, and a upper downspout. The King Street West elevation is has no changes. The entire south facade is indeed visible from King Street, and the proposal removes previously approved awnings and substitutes them with a slightly different design and color. The design of the pass-through windows altered. There are changes in paint color for the trim of the windows and doors. The door closest to King Street turns into a window. Staff support all of these changes. This middle also proposes a painted wood storefront at the eastern end of the building. The design of the storefront takes its cues from other storefronts on King Street, and its design direction is appropriate as a storefront type. What is unusual here is the placement of the storefront on what would have originally been understood as the rear of the building. Staff understand that the development of the American Gardens has changed the traditional front and back relationship of the structure. And staff also note that the King Street facade historically has had no entrance on that elevation. So due to those unusual circumstances and the desire to offer public access, the building, staff support this unusual configuration to allow the historic King Street elevation to remain as it is. The east elevation is minimally visible from the public right of way on Union Street, which is a full block to the east. The elevation proposes the addition of the ground floor storefront with associated provisions to windows and doors. That consideration of storefront is primarily on the more visible north and south facades. If those are approved, then it would follow that the east would be approved as well, given visibility issues as it relates to purview. The entire north elevation is visible from King Street as well. The applicant proposes that the replacement of the single ground floor door with two new doors due to a floor plan reconfiguration. The proposed door on northwest corner on the right side of the elevation lines up with window above. Staff would like the door on the northeast corner on the elevation on the left side of the elevation to likewise line up with the window above it. Staff understand that this will state the shortening of the storefront somewhat as it wraps around to the north and ask for the associated changes to be studied. Staff also note that the LA of trees that currently extends all the way to the gate on King Street. The changing of the doors will state the removal of trees that would block these doors. The proposed site plan on page 9 does not make it clear if the trees will return in same place. The first floor plan on pages 30, 31 and 32 show no trees here. Staff would like to see the LA completed to King Street in some configuration. So staff conditions are to line up the doors on the north elevation with the windows on the second floor and modify storefront accordingly. And second is to complete the array of trees all the way to King Street along the north side of the structure. With that, our recommendation is for approval of revisions to conceptual of approval with board and staff comments and conditions with final review by staff of for permit drawings.
All right, thank you, Lawrence. Any response?
Yes,
You don't mind standing up?
yeah, absolutely. And are we able to get back to the slideshow?
Yeah,
Okay. I didn't know
Well,
what you think.
I don't know. I'll say that without having the technology.
What part? Because
I have printed out versions. I don't know if I can come forward and show them to
Please,
you.
please approach. That's easier.
Okay,
Absolutely.
yeah. So we would love nothing more than to do both of those things that you've described, and we will study it again, but there are two mitigating circumstances. The door, this is the door that does not line up with the stair. And it's because it is sliding, excuse me, it does not line up with the window. We can adjust the distance of this. This was just matching the bay from around the corner. But that wouldn't control. We will look at it one more time, but the challenge was getting the door to slide under the structure of the stair, the head clearance. So we can do it. We will study it and make it fit under there, but we're fitting a lot of things into this and we're trying not to have the stair take up so much space in the footprint. So as that section comes down, the head of the door will hit the stringer of the stair.
Is the stair new?
The stair is new, yes. And to some degree, comment 2 is the same thing. We want to maintain the alley as much as possible, but because of all the components that are going in the kitchen and where this door is located, that is what is creating the potential challenge of adjusting or removing a tree that is in the alley. And we will further study that because we would absolutely love to comply with both of these, and we will try.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that'll take us into our board discussion.
Well, I'll kick it off. I think the changes are really pretty benign, and I agree with staff's comments. The only thing is we don't the board really doesn't have jurisdiction over plantings, if I remember correctly. So I'm not sure how we can't really compel condition number 2 within, the boundaries of our ordinance. I mean, hardscapes, yes, but not necessarily plantings. And I think that staff condition number 1, it would make that facade more pleasing. You're over there.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay. If you can modify the plan to accommodate that, but I certainly agree with staff's recommendation. Next steps.
Thank you, Jay. Anybody else?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Tori and Keith, first, thanks for this park. It's amazing. My children love it, my grandchildren love it, and I love it. It's a great contribution. The site and context buildings that we used in the proposal, these are all, and I know you know this, but these are all primary sites of structures that you selected, the Gibbs Revere and Market Hall, all great buildings, but it's hard for me, the way I'm looking at it, to see the relevance here is we're looking at 174 King Street's east side, not its primary side. It's now its primary side because of the wonderful park, and I get that. But, and also portions of the north and south side. The precedent images are the same for me. They're all wonderful and appropriate, as is the west side of 174 King Street. The fact that it doesn't have a door in it, it's been that way for a long time. And so just what it is. I supported the initial conceptual approval of 174 King Street because of your sensitive approach to the project. But I don't support the creation of this false facade on the east side of 174 King Street just to encourage an additional enhancement after the incredible park that you created. So it's almost like I feel like, okay, now we're going to do the back of the house, and then we go back and do something else in the park, and then we come back and do something at the house. And that's the way it felt for me. I think your initial conceptual is wonderful, and the challenges that come with interior design and conflicting with windows on the outside and balance. I know that's hard. That's all.
Thank you.
I wanted to start out by saying thank you to staff, to Lawrence, Brad, and BD for the detailed comments and the detailed perspective. I think that y'all actually hit the majority of the items as I was thinking about this, and not necessarily needing to say a lot additional, but given that there's 2 opposing views here, I guess I'll speak a little bit more to that. But I do see that the new context in which it sits, and especially expanding the public realm to the sides and the rear of this site, does lay the groundwork for me to reevaluate the orientation of the building. And I understand that, the storefront typically faces the public realm, but the public realm has now surrounded this building, and it had buildings to the other side, and that's where it was originally established, and allowing for it to do that seems to be an appropriate direction, I think, in my opinion. I think it does also allow for some more of the original fabric towards King Street to stay rather than being modified, which to me is a benefit. And so as I look at it, I think that there's remnants of how this building has changed, the stairs and the stucco on the side. There's a few elements that are there, but I think this building sits in a new life, and I am sympathetic to the fact of allowing it to engage with the expanded public realm that's there. So I find that it's appropriate.
Thank you. That being stated, I'm happy to take a motion if anybody wants to jump on.
I guess I will make a motion for conceptual approval with staff conditions and comments.
And I'll second that.
All right. Just Mr. Trampton, to make sure I've got it correct. There's a part of the staff recommendation was for final review by staff of board permit drawings. Would you like to make that part of your motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the motion on the floor is approval of revisions to conceptual approval with board and staff comments and conditions with final review by staff of board permit drawings.
Yes, sir.
All right. And it was seconded by Mr. White. I guess before we vote and make sure I got this right, the conditions was as it relates to the placement of that door with the stairwell, is that going to be a condition of this motion, or is it for further study and then review by staff? Want to make sure we get that part right.
I would be fine with it for further study and review by staff. I think that staff has proven adequately capable of handling this.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So then I have the motion as a motion for approval of the revisions to the conceptual approval with board and staff comments for further study by the applicant with final review by staff of board permit rooms.
Thank you for helping me clean up my.
Is that good for you?
Yes, sir. I'm sad to be losing you.
All right, and Mr. White, is there a second to that particular?
That's correct. Second.
All right, Mr. White, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Grant?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Nay, no.
And I am also yay in favor of the motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, and so item 2 is 649 Meeting Street, which is a category 1. Circa 1897 structure in the east central neighborhood. It is also in the landmark overlay, and it is in the historic corridor district. Applicant is requesting conceptual approval of an addition to a category 1 building. And with that, this is the site context. And now we have applicant's presentation.
Great, thank you. I am Safra Rosen of Sissel Rosen Architects, also currently the department chair of architecture at the American College of Building Arts. I'm joined by his partner, Anthony Mitchell, as well as president of the college, General Colby Broadfire. I'm going to progress fairly quickly through this presentation because you've seen all the background information, and I'll really just focus on the changes and our responses to your comments. So this is our revised design. And I'll mention that most of the discussion at the last hearing did not actually involve the details of the design. So I'm happy to discuss that. And I'll probably turn it over to Mr. Sissel because he did the primary work on the design here as well as drawing. So if you have specific questions about the nature of the design, we'll do that at the end. And I'm going to focus overall on the height, bulk, and massing, which we really did not change from the previous design. One of the comments, and we'll get to this, is that I believe it was Mr. Trantham requested that we sort of turn the design around the side and pay a little bit more attention to the north side of the building, which is on a property line, but because there's a courtyard in the adjacent property that it might be visible. We had a comment, I believe it was from Mr. White, that we not pay over attention to the existing rear wall. There's a masonry wall at the rear of our courtyard. Half of that is on our side and half is on the other side. And it led to our initial response of a unique roof configuration. So we are now not copying that. We have new roof configuration. We have very little change to the plans, other than we've extended the building in length by 14 feet. Otherwise, height and massing is the same, but we realized we actually have more incoming students than we even anticipated, so we need more space. And we've made a minor change. So there was internal circulation within the addition. We have now relocated inside the existing building. Second floor has remained the same. The roof plan has only changed in that we no longer have sort of a single sided clear story window, which again took its cues from the existing rear wall. So we can now have a more symmetrical clear story window roof assembly. Here's a new rendering of the design. Here's a close-up rendering. Now, just let me walk through a couple of the significant comments. I prepared a full response to all of the comments, staff and board. I won't read this entire thing, but just focusing on the key concepts so that we can turn it over to questions. The primary question from the board was to choose a style. Previously, we had presented two, a classical style and a more contemporary style. The college has chosen to proceed with the classical style. The second item was to not necessarily pay direct attention to the existing rear wall in the back, but to restudy the broken pediment. So we've eliminated the broken pediment, and we have a new, more classical, more symmetrical facade and roof structure. The third comment was to turn the corner around the north side. So as you can see, we have a sort of head house in front of this long structure that has the more ornament made of stone. And then as is fairly traditional in buildings of this vintage, we've turned the corner with about one bay with the stone, and then it's a simpler design down the side, but still has some articulation. The next question is that staff had made a comment last time and reiterated the comment this time that we study the interface sort of on the left side of this facade where it joins the existing building, that we pay particular attention to that detail. We agree that's a critical detail. Staff has requested that we come back with that detail at preliminary, and we will do so. The board had some concerns that we previously were proposing a veneer masonry construction. We have eliminated the veneer construction. This will now be solid bearing masonry, all four sides, actually three sides, because we don't have an interior side facing the existing building. But all the new exterior walls would be bearing wall masonry. And the last comment is that board had concerns that we had previously proposed periodically rebuilding the facade. And we've eliminated that. We will build one facade and that'll be it. Those are my comments. If anybody has questions, happy to take them.
Great, thank you so much. You don't have any other presentation or something? Okay, fantastic. Question from the board at this time.
Are there any features or elements of the existing structure that helped inform the design of the proposed addition as it faces Meeting Street? Like, are there line, corbel steps, any of those elements that helped inform where you set different elements in that proposed addition?
Sure. So for a question specifically on sort of the genesis of that, invite Anthony Sissel up.
Hello, everybody. I'm Anthony Sissel, Rosen Architects. It's been a few years since I've been in front of this board, so I'm happy to be back. So to see you all, Jay, great to see you. It's been a while. To that point, the existing wall that we're interfacing with, there is the exact point at which the new facade, such as the existing trolley building, is at one of its brick piers along the side. So there's a very intentional way that it's located. Other than that, there's not a lot of articulation on the side of the trolley building. It has a system of express brick piers and some very minor corbelling kind of with architrave above the capital column. But that wasn't necessarily a key driver. It's such a minute detail. What's really driving the proportions of the building is really a pretty strict adherence to classical proportioning of the width of the pilasters and anta of the facade with their height, and then this is a sort of a teaching building in a lot of ways. For the classical architecture students at ACBA, but also the stone students who are going to be learning to carve classical stonework in and from this building. And so we've followed pretty strict proportioning, classical proportions on all of the elements. So that really drives the overall height. It drives based on the width of the building. There's actually it's unfortunate it didn't make it into the submittal. I think Lawrence may have a copy of it, but the two sides of the stone building are actually designed sort of intentionally to adhere to two slightly different proportioning systems. The front of the building is based very much on the Vitruvian proportioning system of the Romans, and the smaller side of that stone portion is based on the golden section. And as I mentioned, this is a teaching building, and if you don't mind me extolling some of the drivers for where this design evolved. And this is a little unique for me because Sasha and I actually merged our firms after he had been in front of you for conceptual. So I had a unique opportunity to come to a project that there was already a lot of commentary on, a lot of thought on, but with a fresh set of eyes. And so that one comment that he said where you all directed, pick a style. There were two options, pick a style, and the college chose to pursue a classical style. And I said, well, which classical style? There's a lot of different things in classicism, and they can go in a lot of different directions. And the previous design was sort of headed in a very Greek influenced direction. There was a lot of Greek ornament on the building, but it was sort of spread evenly across the whole building. There wasn't much really a focal point to the architecture. And I posited the idea that maybe, given that this is a teaching building and these are students who are learning to carve all sorts of interesting stonework, the Greeks did amazing stonework. I mean, it's undoubtedly they did amazing stonework, but it was also very rigid and regimented, followed very strict formulas. Where things really got fun in classicism was with the Romans and the invention of the arch, which led to barrel vaults and groin vaults and all the different permutations of that produced a lot of creativity in classical architecture. So I posited, what if we sort of took the classical direction in a little bit more of a Roman direction, which produced the facade that you see here. And so it's based on pretty strict Roman Doric proportions for the anta and the internal piers at the corners of that arch. And then the small portico that you actually enter the main stone shop through is a very strict Corinthian portico. So we go from sort of the more stark style of the Roman Doric to the very, very, very ornate thing that you walk through to enter the stone shop. And so, long answer to your question about what's driving the design of the facade. It is very much about adhering to sort of strict classical proportions on all of the elements even down to the small Corinthian columns of the entablature and the pediment there at that door entry, all follow very strict proportioning guidelines.
Well, I guess while we're speaking about proportion and scale, I had a question which I passed on to staff and I think warrant discussion here. Because I do have a concern, and if I'm wrong, I'd like to understand, but I see a couple of different scales of this building in the drawings. And if you can help clarify that for me, I would really appreciate it. The elevation or the perspective that we're showing here shows about the capital depth underneath the eave of the building. So it's about, I think if you were to go to the page before this, it's about 1 foot 3 inches down. Maybe page before that. Let me see, what page would that be on? It would be on 77. It's the one with all the elevations on it. Yeah, that right there. So we're about 1 foot 3, I think, in the dimension that's here. And if you don't mind dropping down, I believe 2 pages to the north side elevation. Yeah, right there. Here, the eave ties in almost a capital below the capital. that we're showing here. So in terms of what I can estimate, when I look at the side elevation and I look at the perspectives, there's about a 4-foot difference between kind of what I can tell is the height of the building as it relates to the existing. Is that something you can help me resolve?
Yeah, I think there might be some of the background information on the trolley barn was traced study from a Revit model that we had that I think this is what you're seeing in the rendering is the more accurate version where and I apologize if there's an inconsistency in that, but this is the more accurate version where the essentially top of the brick of the trolley barn comes in roughly into the architrave area of the pediment above the capitol. This is the accurate version.
So as we look at reviewing this for height, scale, and mass, this is the elevation this is the scale that we should be looking at.
And if you look at and I apologize, there may be something going on in that side elevation, but if you look in sort of in this drawing here, where you can see that relationship there where the architrave and the pediment and the capitol sort of coming into that area there. And then if you go to the street context.
Because the street context shows the capitol when you zoom in it's actually aligned / above the eave in that view. Like whenever I look at it here, I can see the capitol and I can see the eave coming down and the capitol is above the eave in that view.
I think the intention is for essentially the architrave above the capitol to be in the zone of where the top of the brick of the trolley barn is. We don't have that drilled down exactly at conceptual here, but that's the intent. And so that's what's shown in the rendering.
Okay.
And following up on that. Ordinarily, I would ask this question at preliminary, but because I'm not sure if it's going to be visible or not, I think it's important now. You have the two roofs coming together. How is that water going to be handled? And based on where these buildings tie in together, when you're standing in Meeting Street looking back, are you going to see, and currently it's not shown, how that's happening. And I don't really understand.
Sasha's been working on it because so he can explain. Yep. So the current design is that the existing roof dies literally on top of the masonry, and there's a half round gutter that just runs the length of the fascia there against the brick. Because the new addition is actually going to run up alongside the brick there, we're actually going to stop the gutter just at the point where this facade is adjacent to that facade. The existing gutter to the front of that will remain, so everything coming forward from that facade, and it'll drain just like it does now. Everything behind that will be turned around to drain towards the back. But again, so the upper roof will continue to have a half round gutter, same as it does now. And the new addition has a flat roof behind the front facade and on either side of the clear story structure, and that all drains to the back.
So at the intersection of those two buildings there's a hanging gutter on the masonry of the old building that comes east.
Correct.
And I'd like to see that detail. I think it's important to see that in it. I don't really understand how that works. I know you got it, but
And that was one of the things that BD was saying, I think, so to bring back support, was the more detail of that specific condition.
For me, that would be important to see now, because we're talking about height, scale, and mass, but that detail, that's right there in your face. Again, I might be in the minority, but that's an important transition. When I look at it on all drawings submitted, I will see how that's gonna work. I'm sure that you've got it figured out. It's hard for me to see. Which would change architectural detail in there. And it may not.
Yeah, the stone, as shown, will continue the way it is. So we're not currently showing the half round gutter running forward from that, but it'll go back and it'll end, right at that lower portion of the cornice. Yeah, a little higher than that. Yeah. Right. I'm sure. This point right there.
The gutter will come in just below the cornice there. And then stop, and then going back behind that, this doesn't care if it's there. The drainage goes to the rear of the building behind, so that won't be visible.
Anything else, Mr. Bowman? All right, correct. Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you all so much. That'll take us into public comment.
Hi, Lisa Jones, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF supports this request for conceptual approval for the addition to the Category 1 building. We believe this proposal meets the high level of scrutiny that Category 1 buildings in the landmark overlay require. Our support includes the following considerations. First, there's an exceptional educational component associated with this project's use of high quality materials, traditional building techniques, and the traditional design of the structure. Second, the height, scale, and mass of the addition is adequately subordinate to the primary facade of the historic trolley barn structure. And third, the project serves as a showcase for the work and craftsmanship of the American College of Building Arts students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Building on HCF's comments, we really appreciate the American College of the Building Arts continuing to engage us in this conversation. We think the initial conceptual discussion that the board facilitated a couple of months ago was really thoughtful and robust and has resulted in a thought exercise that this project team has taken and run with and has resulted in what we think is a really promising conceptual design. We look forward to seeing this at preliminary and are happy to offer our support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, thank you. So staff comments and recommendations.
Okay, there are actually previous staff and board comments which are public record that the board has and that I'll not go into here. So our current staff comments are that the application was previously deferred for restudy and for identification of a single pathway option with board and staff comments and conditions in March of this year. In addition to being a Category 1 structure, the trolley barn is also in the landmark overlay. This submittal is for an addition to the rear north portion of the trolley barn inside, and thus visibility is somewhat limited from Meeting Street. rel- relevant to this the discussion of an addition to a category 1 building is the Charleston standard number 7, which states additions or exterior alterations to historic properties should be sympathetic to historic materials, textures, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. The new work be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, proportion, and massing to protect the integrity of the property and its setting. To respect the authenticity of the historic structure and its context and setting, the new alterations or additions should be clearly discernible from the old. The differentiation may or may not be stylistic and may be as subtle as a change in building footprint, materials, or other means. Also relevant is ordinance section 54-306.13, which states additional buildings and additions to buildings that are subject to the jurisdiction of the BAR shall be subordinate in height, scale, and mass to the primary building, etc. Previous staff and board comments and conditions included the following. The direction to pick a specific style to pursue for the addition, with the notation that the board does not have a stylistic agenda, but did have concern about the type of classicism being deployed. Also, concern that the facade was being built as a veneer. As well, support of height, scale, and mass of the proposed addition as it is subordinate to the trolley barn. Also, concern that the ornamented classical approach calls attention to itself and away from category 1 structure, and therefore is not subordinate. There was also an addition requiring a more articulated joint or small hyphen between the addition and the historic brick wall. Also, a discussion of whether the facade should be rebuilt over time by various cohorts of students. In response to board and staff comments and condition, the applicant has chosen to pursue a classical approach with references to the turn of the 20th century classicism deployed in buildings with ornamented facades such as the the stations of Daniel Burnham. Proposed bearing masonry for the facade and for all exterior walls. And it is no longer proposing veneer construction. Related to the subordinate height, scale, and mass of the proposal. It used the mission and the programming of the ACBA as their context for choosing a material palette, and asserted that the placement on the site away from the street and a courtyard setting supports the subordination of the addition. It has not depicted the articulated joint or small hyphen between the addition and the historic wall. It is now proposing a single student involved build of the designs submitted. Based on this revised proposal, staff appreciate the depiction of well-composed classicism, particularly the removal of the partial asymmetrical broken pediment. Support the use of bearing masonry for the construction of the addition. Affirm the appropriateness of the height, scale, and mass of the submittal. Understand the mission of the BAR to be that of considering the physical context of the proposal as stated in Standard 7, as well as the mission of the American College of Building Arts to include classical architecture as a key context for their programming. As regards previous board comments related to the potential classicism to be subordinate and or appropriate for the context of the landmark structure. Staff refers to both the board's statement that the BAR does not have stylistic agendas, which is applied consistently and not just in this application, and to ordinance section 54-306.13, which clearly notes that additions to buildings that are subject to the jurisdiction of the VAR should be subordinate in height, scale, and mass to the primary building. And does not reference architectural direction. If the board believed classicism to be inappropriate for the context and subordination, then the motion should not have been to ask the applicant to make a choice, but to clearly state that option 2 as defined in March of this year's middle be the only appropriate architectural direction for the applicant to pursue. Applicant has followed 5 of the 6 standards, 7 directives to compatibility with features perhaps relating to architectural direction and therefore up for debate. And the standard 7 directive for the addition to be discernible from the historic structure. Staff also note that the proposal is set back on the site and does not sit directly on Meeting Street. Given this assessment, staff affirmed that the classical architectural direction is an acceptable choice to achieve subordination. We do have concerns about how the addition will touch the historic wall. The column closest to the addition is not a flat plane. How will the applicant negotiate that variability? The current conceptual plan details shows that the column of the base of the column touching the historic wall as previously mentioned. This is not an acceptable approach. There needs to be some type of joint or small hyphen between the addition and the historic wall. And we are comfortable with a single proposal built once by students. Staff conditions include that the next reviews middle must include details showing how the new addition will connect to the historic wall as requested by board and staff. And that the scale of the proposed addition has been noted to be different between what is shown in elevations and in renderings. As this difference directly impacts how board and staff view the issues related to subordination, we need to see these drawings in agreement as to actual scale in relation to the historic structure. Our recommendation is actually approval of conceptual with board and staff comments and conditions thank you. Okay. Our actual recommendation is conceptual approval with board and staff comments and conditions, and a requirement for ongoing drawings to be clear and in agreement as to how the addition intersects the historic structure.
I think Lawrence, I just want to make sure for the record, we have y'all's, we have all of the staff conditions. We cover all those.
We have 4, I believe Lawrence has read 2.
Oh.
The conditions 3 and 4.
All right. Step.
I think 3 and 4.
Condition 3 was staff has spoken with Sasha Rosen, advising him of board and staff concerns regarding the apparent differences in scale shown in the elevations and renderings. Regarding the apparent differences, he checked on these and said that they were indeed in agreement, and on the renderings, a tonal shift at the eve line was possibly causing some confusion. And 4 is to staff. The question is it is really whether these apparent graphic inconsistencies rise to the level of deferral or this conceptual level of review. to staff. Nature of 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 classical design will govern the scale, and it will not be significantly different with any adjustment. Thus, height scale and math and general architecture are clearly enough defined.
Thank you, Lawrence. Appreciate that. All right, any response from the applicant?
Just one minor clarification that at the point of interface of the new facade with the existing structure, the pilaster is actually aligning with the top part of the brick, so it's actually a flat plane right at that point. And so we will actually have a hyphen of approximately 6 inches in width that will align with where the existing gutter is, and then that gutter will turn to a downspout that comes down the joint. So we do have a clear idea of how that interface happens, and in fact, the exterior wall is in a single plane so that the detail doesn't need to be overly complicated.
Thank you so much. All right, public comment, please. There is any?
Oh, we already did that.
Oh, we did that. I'm off. We're past that part. Thank you all for your comment. All right, board discussion. I got lost.
So. First off. This is wonderful. So this project's gonna get approved. I don't have any doubt about that. We're talking about an addition going adjacent to a category 1 detail building. And I think that we should have these scaling issues resolved. I think it ought to be part of an application that comes back to this board for conceptual approval. And I understand what you're saying about the better the distance between the buildings, but the interaction between these two buildings is simply not clear to me, and that's very important to me. I have no doubt that it'll be resolved and then so move forward, but I'm supporting a deferral of this in order to get those details and scale worked out. Drawn.
Thank you, Mr. Myers.
And I guess that's what I wanted to ask the board about too, being the newest member here, you know, and this is a category 1 structure. And I know actually the very first agenda item that I set on here was, what was that? It was 68 Spring Street. That was a addition to the Carpel's Manuscript Museum. And it was, again, interesting. It was a hyphen addition to a, you know, category 1 structure. And there was a lot of details that we reviewed in that, that came in, and it was a learning curve for me. But in understanding the specific connection to this, it's whether or not to identify that as a detail to review at preliminary, but then that's compounded a little bit with the scale of the presentation of the drawings and how that relates to the existing. And so whether or not that's something we can sufficiently condition to allow to move on to preliminary, or at this point, if it's something that needs to be clearly represented to us. It is in my opinion, a critical juncture of this building for where we tie in, and is a deferral to have those clearly spelled out and differentiated. Ms. Metters has said is the appropriate course of action. So I'm here to listen at this point. I have some additional comments depending on where other members feel like this might go, but I'd like to listen on your thoughts on this.
Well, so conceptual is height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction. And while that's going to be a really important detail, and it may change yet again once your structural engineer gets a hold of it. But I think that they clarified which condition is intended in their response to your questions earlier. And while it's an important detail, it's not really pertinent to the general architectural direction, and it's not really going to affect the height, scale, and mass so much as it is just going to slide that facade over a wee bit in order to make space. So in this case, I don't know that I would think that we would be deferring a conceptual application for lack of a preliminary level detail. So if they hadn't been able to explain which they intend, we would probably have no choice. I've always been a little bit mystified as to how this became a category 1 building, but that's not really what we're debating. I'm sure somebody has a rationale. But as far as that particular detail needing to be developed, I think it is something that we can require to see a preliminary, and if it's not there at preliminary, and if it's not satisfactory at preliminary, then it would stall out at that point.
I fall in line with where Jay is on that as well. I think that the record is covered on that under the staff conditions, specifically talking about that. Particularly at number 2, under the conditions. So I think that the record is covered on that and that it can be addressed at preliminary.
Well, I have a couple of other points I wouldn't mind bringing up for discussion for the board as we're here in our commentary period. As Mr. White noted, you know, in your first review of this application, that was bring a singular design, so not a series of designs. So we're at a singular design in this approach, and style has changed. We're not here to review that, but I think we're looking at the elements, and I think I made this point in our last meeting, of this design within its context to an adjacent structure. And so I do agree that that detail is of primary importance, and I could support, I think, maybe that being developed at a preliminary level. But the questions that I come to is, are the particular attributes of this design overriding the subordinate nature that we have to review something with? And so we have compatibility, differentiation, and how that relates to subordinate. Yes, and that's one of the items that we're weighing out at conceptual for the architectural character of it. And we have a very simple structure with very simple articulation. You know, we have elements of that structure that need to be picked up, and those are, you know, the height, scale, mass, the features, the materials, and the proportions. And there's the windows, the materiality, the style, you know, how those are being treated, and its scale and proportion into the addition that are significantly different. And all of these are contrasting elements. And my question is, at what point does that tip under architectural direction into something that's no longer subordinate next to another structure? And so I'm struggling a little bit with that. I can see that if it was actually separated through some articulated joint, and I do think that there has been significant development along the north side, the way that that facade and the stonework turns the corner and then shifts back into the brick, picks up the rhythm of the building. That is a detail that has had, I was actually more concerned with that facade even than the Meeting Street facing one. And that's had significant improvement since the last application. So I'm curious what your feelings are here in terms of the amount of elements that are going into that facade, its architectural character, and how it relates to the existing.
Yeah, I think, well, so the ordinance, if you go back to the ordinance, it defines subordination really extraordinarily well. So our ordinance doesn't define much of anything, much to many applicants' consternation. But, you know, style not being among them. And the fact that it's obviously a higher style than the building it's adjoining is, that might feel a little strange, but we don't, you know, the ordinance doesn't really assign a hierarchy to style in terms of determining subordination. And there's one other thing that staff didn't draw from in the ordinance that I think is pertinent here, and that's the latitude that the ordinance gives, or guidelines give, to civic structures. And that's where the applicant's argument about, well, this is a teaching element where an institution that teaches these traditional crafts. I think that is worth considering too, because if this were a bank or what do we build downtown now? Nail salons, right? So if it were some other purpose, commercial purpose, it would be much different. Because we had expressed a lot of concern years ago about the little building that Edmonds Oast had built for their retail operations, now a rental facility. seem to be really hot topic compared to everything else. But here, I think the civic or cultural nature of the building does give the applicants some latitude. The other thing is that if this is going to be built by students or by graduates, and if it is going to be an expression of their capacity for craft, then let her rip. You know, if we tell them to do some sort of stripped, neoclassicism, and then we're kind of telling them to not apply their craft. And I think that's worth our consideration too. The fact that it's back from the street and the fact that it is, partially concealed by the rest of the building helps, although with category 1, as with category 2, it's not, visibility from the public right away is not a factor. So that's something to consider, but I'm actually very comfortable with their response to our comments from last time. And I do think that staff has been very detailed and explicit in their observations and recommendations. So I'm okay with this thing getting conceptual approval.
I appreciate your deliberation and pointing out some of those elements, because as I was considering it, and I did read through the variety of comments or responses that were given from the applicant, which I appreciate. That seemed quite helpful. And I could see how those different elements do bring a different level to this project. I do think as this project moves towards preliminary, there are a few details that might need restudy as you start to look at it, especially the way that the gable of the portico intersects the window and the way that some of those other elements are coming in here. I think that some of those will warrant some restudy so that they don't create issues down at preliminary or final as well. But I can see how separating the structure, allowing it to have a didactic purpose and allowing it to be something that the public gets to experience is appropriate.
Thank you. And I think I would just second some of Mr. White's comments in terms of the issues on subordination that you were discussing. The only additional piece I'll add to that too, and it's mentioned as part of the staff comments, is some of the precedent we've already laid here, and giving them these two different ways to approach it already. And I think that having done that, it's important for us to continue to follow that precedent, since we gave them those options and now face them. I'll just add that to it as well.
Well, since we've all had the turn at the mic here, I'll introduce a motion for conceptual approval with board and staff comments and conditions, and a requirement for ongoing drawings to be clear and in agreement as to how the addition intersects the historic structure.
Thank you, Mr. White. Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further comment or debate on that? White, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Grantham,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metter?
Yeah,
I'm also yay in favor. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3 was withdrawn by the applicants. That takes us to item number 4.
Mr. Chairman, opportunity to speak to this matter, this agenda item.
Item number 4,
The project that deals with 261 Compton Street.
it's been withdrawn.
So I'm the applicant,
Okay,
and I did not withdraw it, and I don't believe that our client withdrew it. So that's just my question is, do you know who withdrew this application?
Someone emailed, this is Brad Thomas, staff architectural planner. Someone emailed me from MUSC saying to please withdraw the application. I cannot remember who. I have to go through my email, but I can discuss with you.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
On that, no,
yeah. I guess y'all don't have y'all's recommendations on that yet, since y'all were under the impression it was withdrawn.
It was
Yeah.
I was trying to see if there's a way to move it forward, but
Oh.
now it's all.
Well,
information.
the agenda was revised.
The agenda-
It's signage. Have you-
No, yes, this was for signage, but we have no comments for it yet because of it.
all right.
And the public now would have an opportunity to
Understood.
comment. I'm
Thank you.
sorry about that. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out a solution for you. But
I
this-
appreciate it.
Unfortunately, the guidelines are not gonna allow me to do it.
Just curious, who's your project manager with MUSC?
That'd be Wes.
Okay.
Wes Listrow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, yeah. Thanks for sticking around to let us know. Sorry
Absolutely,
about that.
no problem.
All right. So that does take us to number 4 then.
Okay.
That'll be frustrating. So, Braxton, I don't know if neither want to come up or not. Braxton is the owner of Pop-Up Bagels. I'm George Walton with Lingio Sign. Fortunately for us, we are not dealing with a category 1 building, and we're working with a sign.
But can Lawrence introduce that?
So sorry. I'm in small meetings for the.
Appreciate your enthusiasm.
Go ahead, Lawrence. Thank you, and my apologies.
Item 4 is 83 Marion, which is not rated as you observed. And it is in the Olden Historic District. It is in the Music Ragboro neighborhood. And the applicant is requesting final approval of an illuminated hanging sign.
Yes. Which, to our interpretation, does meet all of the city guidelines. There have just been some changes, I think in January of this year, where any illuminated sign has to go up for review and is not eligible for approval at the staff level anymore. So again, it's everything. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Everything is conforming. So you can move on to any way we can.
All right. Well, thank you.
And
We want to be entertained.
No, I can try. I mean, I'm
No, it's
not a good
okay.
singer or dancer, but
No, it's okay. It's totally okay.
All right. Good. Are there questions from the board at this point?
what,
Y'all know what we're looking at? Yeah, I had a chance to review that.
sure.
Okay.
Why is it here?
Because it's a board policy that
Yeah.
needs to be here.
It's the board policy.
Yeah, I think it was
It's
a revision to.
sim- primarily because it is illuminated, but that's not the only
It's
reason.
not the only reason.
And perhaps we should let our reviewer on this project, Mr. Thomas, give a little background to address your
I'll accept that. That'd be great. Thank you.
question.
Well, my, staff's comment will address the background, so,
Okay.
okay, so I didn't know, do we want to do the public comment and all of those?
Yeah, well, let's just keep rolling through it. I just want to see if we had any, that was an initial question, but really they're for the applicant, so we can get that to our next portion. Well, thank you so much. Is there any public comment? Not seeing anyone else in the room. I don't believe so. Now we can get into city staff comments for recommendation.
So the first slide here, or you want me? Okay. First slide here is just the BAR signage policy statements that are relevant to this application. And these are just for reference. Staff comment is, while the primary component of this application is proposed illumination, the applicant is also proposing a sign type that is not specifically addressed in either the BAR sign policy statement or the zoning ordinance. Essentially what it is a suspended facade sign. Staff find that the suspended facade sign is the most appropriate sign type for this location because of the following factors. On the building, there's not a traditional sign band where a facade sign will go. The height of the canopy makes it the suspended nature of it appropriate. The large amount of storefront glazing and the contemporary architectural direction of the building. Staff support the proposed font, color, and overall size of the sign. And regarding illumination, staff acknowledges and agrees with the applicant's need for illumination. It's going to be open during the wee hours of the morning. So that's potential for it to be very dark outside, so illumination is needed. Applicant is proposing to use white LEDs. The application does not specify the illumination levels or how the sign will be mounted. And even those, these technical details are unresolved, staff is confident that these can be addressed within the permitting process, and shouldn't affect the board's ability to evaluate the appropriateness of the sign. So staff's conditions are to provide details regarding mounting and illumination level and color temperature to staff within the permit drawings, and for staff to provide a nighttime staff field inspection of the illumination and adjust levels if requested by staff following inspection, recording them and providing a program for monitoring and maintaining them. Staff recommendation was final approval with board and staff conditions with final reviews of detailed staff and permit and associated field reviews.
Thank you so much. Any response?
Yeah, we actually already have stamped engineer drawings and electrical diagrams and so forth. I'm not sure if Lindsay, my partner, had time to upload them here.
There's, from what I remember, there's no actual permit for the sign yet. It's just the board.
Okay, so yeah, we already have all of the lighting and engineering.
Okay.
So that's easy.
Great, thank you so much. All right, we'll move into board discussion though.
So it's blade sign hanging the wrong way.
Yeah,
Okay,
the blade sign hanging the wrong way and it's positioned where a facade sign
Right.
would be intended to go.
I mean, I think if I remember, so I started glazing over when we talk about signage. But I seem to recall that one of the reasons that we had a particular interest in illuminated signs is when they're placed on historic structures. This being a newer building, and it is scaled appropriately, I don't have any problem with staff's recommendation.
And to interject for just a split
Well,
second.
yeah,
This is forward.
let me let the board continue and I'll give you a moment if you would like to add at the end.
I feel it's my night.
Oh, no.
I don't.
All right, Mr. Matters, let's hear it.
I just don't feel like it's our responsibility for providing safety lighting through sign. You know, as part of the application, there was a note to the BAR small that it's gonna be open at 5 AM in the morning, so it also provides light for safety for people coming into. And
The context of that staff comment was that the board in the past has typically only recommended illumination for businesses that are open during nighttime hours. And this was just kind of the inverse, where it's open enough early in the morning where it will be dark out. So it wasn't in terms of a safety thing, it was just a kind of an inverse of what we typically allow, just different time of day.
And within your ordinance, is it typically that it is only open during, it's only illuminated during business hours, or is it illuminated 24/7? Or is
That is not within an ordinance or policy statement. That can be a condition if you want it, but it's not within a document.
That seems like a reasonable condition. It's probably what the business might actually want, because they don't want somebody rattling the door at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah, that was my only thought towards condition that would be important, because especially for, as I was thinking about it, for something open during night hours, obviously there's a much longer duration of the business being open during those hours. But that this might be stipulated that it's only illuminated within a certain duration of the hours that it's open. So it's not illuminated at, 10 o'clock at night when the business is closed.
Thank you, Mr. Trantham. Anything else from the board on the discussion standpoint? Did you want to add anything?
No, I was just going to comment as far as the structure is concerned. The owner of the building has requested that we attach it in such a way that should the tenant never leave or anything change, that everything could be unbolted. There'll be a couple angle iron tabs that are welded to the C-beam. And then hurricanes, anything comes along, it will be able to be unbolted and removed from the building. So there will be next to no trace of it.
Okay, thank you. All right,
Well,
Is anybody,
I'll introduce a motion for final approval with board and staff conditions. With final review of details of staff in the permit and associated field reviews, and that the sign only be illuminated during business hours.
Second that. I'll let you read it back. Sorry.
that's all right, I'm trying to get it down. All right, so I do have a motion that has been seconded for final approval with board and staff conditions with final review of details to staff and the permit and associated field reviews, and that the sign only be eliminated during business hours. Any further comments or debate on that? All right, Mr. White, how you vote?
Yay in favor.
Franklin?
Yay, baby.
Mr. Metters?
They know.
And I'm
Then
all-
we'll come get bagels.
I'm yay in favor, the motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Actually, folks.
And yeah.
Well, last time, I'm not sure.
Oh, one sec, yeah.